Welcome to Excel Class Hub. My name is Mr. Olabisi Adekoya. I'll be taking you for literature in English today, and we have non-African prose text to do today. Now, the very non-African prose text we'll be looking at is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a core UTME text. It's also used for WAEC purposes. Among all the texts recommended by JAMB, this is the most popular among them. And it's most interesting. If you have never read it, you are missing out on a lot as a literature in English student. Today, what is our main focus? This book is a novel, and what it actually talks about is, from the title, To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, a mockingbird is not a bird of prey. It's a bird of entertainment, a bird of games. So when it gets into someone else's garden, it's not there to eat up the vegetation or to destroy the animals there, but it's there just to entertain. So to kill a harmless bird like this is wickedness. Now that's a symbol. That's a symbol. So expect a question on the use of symbol in this novel in your UTME, literature in English. Why would anybody kill a mockingbird? And who is the mockingbird? Or who are the mockingbird in the story? The main mockingbird in the story is Tom Robinson. That does not mean it's only restricted to him. There are many more characters that are also mockingbirds that got killed. The killings are social, some are physical. So Tom Robinson got killed in both ways. He lost his life physically, physical death, and social death. The story revolves around him, although he's not the main protagonist of the story. The main protagonist of the story is our storyteller, the narrator. That's Jane Scout. Jane Scout Finch. She's a 6 to 9 year old girl who lives in a fictional setting in Macomb, in Alabama. There's a lot to learn about Alabama. That used to be the host of racism in the 1930s, and that makes the novel much more important. The novel is partly historical and biographical. Now, historical in the sense that it's talking about the problem of Great Depression in the 1930s in the United States of America, especially in southern US. Now, what actually happened in the story? It's a story of the case of false crime accusation. Tom Robinson was a young black boy who was not suspicious or suspecting of the roles of the whites in his community at the beginning until he gets himself into trouble. Now, when does this trouble begin? We have a girl, a 19-year-old girl named Maya Ewell. So she's sexually abused by that father. The father has 8 children and he takes care of none of them. He's white, so the girl is also white too. But he would never take care of his children because he feels he is part of the scum of the white society, like the poorest among them. So he feels drinking, womanizing, that will give him some make him feel his manhood. So this young girl wants company, company filled with innocence. So she finds that in a young black boy in her neighborhood who is unsuspecting of the plans of gimmicks that is made against him. So he falls for their traps. What does he do? He starts making friends with the girl, and before you know it, anytime the girl wants him to visit, she'll send the younger ones away to get her something. So someday, the girl's father, named Bob Hewell, the man finds out that the young black boy normally comes to the house. So he does not know how to get the boy to leave the girl. The best thing to do is to kill him. He kills the boy and he knows that if he dies, the system will not get justice for him. So, and he will be able to get his daughter to do whatsoever he wants her to do. So it's a win-win for him. And the girl too cannot resist whatsoever he asks her to say, because the society will support him being a white dominated society. Now he makes this plan. One day the boy checks into the house, and as he's seated talking to the girl, he beats the girl up and then goes after the boy and kills, and then goes after the boy. As the boy is trying to run away, but luckily for him, he's able to run away. So after some days, investigation begins as to what actually happens to the girl. He rapes his own daughter by himself after beating her for hanging around, with a black boy, and which is not allowed at the period. The historical period we are looking at here is not just the 1930s, but it was a period in the southern US called the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan and the Jim Crow laws. Well, all these historical events point to the fact that the blacks and the whites were meant to live in segregated areas, and not just live there, everything had to be segregated. The buses had to be segregated, the friendship had to be segregated. So whosoever crossed the line will become the victim. And the whites don't become victims. It's only the blacks that get to become victims. So as this young man is in that house, I said, he finds his way, he escapes. And an investigation begins as to what happens to the girl. Well, at the trial, the young man got the service of one of the smartest lawyers in Macomb County. Macomb County. Don't forget, I said that Macomb is not a real place, but the state actually exists, the state of Alabama. But Macomb is created by the figment of the imagination of our author, Harper Lee. So at the trial, the young boy is able to get the service of one of the smartest lawyers in the town, and happens to be a black lawyer named Atticus Finch. He's able to get the service of that lawyer, and the lawyer argues in favor of him, asking the question that if truly this girl got raped and she had a scar on her left cheek, so whosoever caused that scar or raped her must have been a right-handed person. And this accused man, Tom Robinson, he has his two hands, left and right, but his left arm, his left arm is handicapped. So there is no way he could have been able to hit that girl with so much impact, even to the point of rape. So that impact, that hit must have been done by someone who had his right hand very effective. The lawyer asked for the young man to be pardoned, for the crime to be well investigated. But the white dominated jury, because all the members of the jury are white, so nobody bothers to check or investigate what the lawyer said. So they go ahead and sentence him to death. So while his case is being appealed, he tries to run away, escape prison. So in the process of escaping prison, he gets lynched to death. He loses his life. Now, at the trial, I said something. When the girl is called to testify, she testified against the young man. She said that she was raped by the young man without acknowledging the fact that they were actually dating. So the young man lost his life as a result. As the story unfolds, Mr. Howell, who actually raped his own daughter himself and got someone else to become a victim of that, wants to get vengeance for the humiliation he got in the hands of the lawyer, Atticus Finch. So he goes ahead, or he goes after Atticus Finch's children. He wants to kill them. He wants to give the man some worry, just because he's able to stand up to his bullying. So he goes after them, and I'm referring to our narrator. I'm referring to a narrator, that Scout, and the elder brother who is 4 years ahead of her, JAMB, as well as their friend, Deal. The three of them, they normally play around the Mecom territory. Because they are so young, don't forget, how old is this young girl, as I said earlier? Okay, that's 6. She's so young, inexperienced. She does not know racism is alive, that racism actually exists. So she believes that everybody is her friend, even though her father wants her against that choice. Don't forget, you may want to know, where is the mother? The mother died of a heart-related disease. So they were raised by just a single father. Although the man also has other people around them, like the aunt Alexander, like Capernaum. Okay, that's the housekeeper. So the children, they live within the background of so much love. Not that the man does not show them more than enough love. In fact, almost every other person in the story is struggling economically. But that family, the Finch's family, they are all doing well. They are all doing well. They are very rich, to the point that the lawyer is even able to get some of our debt recovered from the so-called white bullies. So he is a very rich man, at least comfortable. Now, as the story unfolds, the man wants to get, I'm talking about the man who raped his own daughter himself. He wants to get vengeance for what the lawyer has done to him. He feels his ego, bruised. So he wants to get back at him. And he goes after his children. So one day the children were playing as usual, because they like to visit a particular place in the town called the Bull Radley place. They like to go there. They like to go and play there, and because the man is nice to them. Bull Radley is a white man, so he himself is going against the law of the town, that there should be segregation. So why would a white man be nice to black kids? So he normally drops sweet candies, candy sticks, many things for the children to eat. But it's quite unfortunate. The children's father, Atticus, does not like the idea. So he beats them when he finds out. But this does not save them from the problem that happens that night. When James is outside, and this man, the main antagonist of the story, and who is the antagonist of the story? You remember the antagonist? Okay, that is the man that kills his own child himself. I mean, that rapes his own child himself. I'm referring to Mr. Hewell. He goes after the boy and almost mangled him. He mangled him. He harmed him. Now, when the boy gets, but fortunately for the children, they have a very good man in one white man named Boo Radley is there on the board. Boo Radley. So Boo Radley gets justice for the children by going after Mr. Hewell's life, and he kills him because the man won't stop tormenting all the black children of society of that town. So he needs a stronger bully, especially if that bully is coming from a white person. So he goes after his life and kills him. Now, this is his mother is investigated. When it's investigated, he tells them, and they call the lawyers out, that what is the cause of the man's death. We have the sheriff of the Macomb town. What does he say? He says the man kills himself. He takes his own life. That he falls on his own sword. That's a claim he makes so that it will not be well investigated. Since he kills by sword, so he must die by the sword. Are you getting it? Okay. Now, you may be wondering, how do we get the idea of To Kill a Mockingbird? Which characters tell us about the title? I want you to find out that yourself. Do you know the person? Because that's a core JAMB-based question. Who uses the word to kill a mockingbird? Okay. It's two characters that tell us about To Kill a Mockingbird. But the person who takes that time to tell us the details of the story is Aunt Alexandra. In one of her conversations with this young girl, the 6-year-old girl, Scout, now, let me ask you this question. Let's go to the background now, because some questions are about formalism. If you remember, in our last series, I talked about different theories of literature or movements in literature. One of them is formalism. Another one is not formalism, is biography. Another one is sociology. So all of these things are important. So there are questions coming from biography. So it's not enough to just read the book. You also have to read some information about the book itself. So, when was this book published? That's a likely UTME question on this book. This book was published in 1960. That's the publication year. Publication year 1960. Now, is this book an autobiography or not? Yes, it is. It's an autobiography. And you may want to ask the question, how autobiographical is it? Like how much of the author finds itself into the book. Well, there are three historical events in the story that we can link to the life of the author herself. One of them is the trial of 1931 in the United States of America. It's a very popular story or trial case. What happened? Some young black boys were accused of raping two white women falsely, and then that case was taken to court a couple of times. The first time it was a success for the litigants. The second time it was a reversal. So they kept moving the story back and forth. These people never actually raped the two white women. That's what later ended up the story. Now, that same event influenced what happens in the story. When one young black boy named Tom Robinson was falsely accused of raping, of raping, was falsely accused of raping a young girl of 19. It never existed. Again, what the character of Atticus reminds us of the same nature of the author's father. The author's father was a lawyer. So she built the story around the personality of her father. Her father is someone she looks up to a lot. So she has to create a character everybody will look up to too. Okay, so the father's character, the father's personality, yes, we see that in the story too. And the last historical event in the life of the author is the Great Depression. The Great Depression of early 1930s in the United States of America. The first 3 years of that decade were full of Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression, I think you do economics, and I hope you know what depression means. Depression is a long-term lack of economic growth in a country or in the world. So if it lasts for more than a year, it becomes depression. If it lasts less than a year, it becomes recession. So to tell you how long this depression, this austerity period lasted in the US, and it spreads all over the world. Now, to be a black person in the 1930s means you are handicapped. Now, to also be born or to witness that period itself, well, even if you are not black, if you are also white, you are also handicapped. So being a black person living in that period, you are handicapped twice. So the story is full of historical events, sociologically and biographically. Now, let's move away from there. Let's look at another part of the story. I'm no longer talking about the background or the theme or subject matter now. Let's look at another literary concept from the story. We're looking at the setting of the story. Ask yourself, what does setting mean? Please, I want you to talk or think like a literature in English student. Don't tell me setting means place. I will not take that. What is setting? Okay. Well, in another term in literature, we can call setting local color. Local color. So local setting means the background or the cultural milieu that influences the events in the story. Now, the cultural period. So when we talk about place, when we talk about time, like 1920s, 1930s. That's just a way of distracting or making it undermine the main thing. Those are just distractions. Settings are largely cultural. They are cultural, they are sociological, they are political. So all of these cultural, political, sociological events happening in a story, we call them the setting. Now, we can also have the physical setting. So setting is divided into four. We have physical, we have cultural, we have geographical, and we have sociological setting. So if you have been preparing to tell us about the physical setting only, oh yeah, I know the novel takes place in the United States of America. I know. No, that's not enough. That's not the main thing. Yeah, now let's go to the physical setting of the story. The story is set in terms of place and time. When we talk about physical setting, we are referring to place and time. When we talk about time, we are not referring to what can be measured in numbers, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 1929. That's not what we're really talking about. We are talking about a long period of time. The story is set in southern US. That there's a part of southern US called Deep South. Deep South. So Alabama is one of them. Don't forget, that is the home state of racism in the 1950s up to 1960s until the civil rights movement became successful in 1965. That was the state that, captured, or even in which this man was killed, Martin Luther King. So there's a lot to know about that state. It's up to date. It's a state full of blacks, and the whites, they are highly racist. They are few, but they will not let the big number of blacks there become anything important, because they know if they had already hurt their ancestors, the children, if given the opportunity, they will turn the tables around. So they are willing to stop them from accessing all the resources they are enjoying. So it's not surprising to see our author setting the story in that type of state. Though you may want to say that Luther got killed in the late 1960s, to be precise 1968. So, but before 1968, this story was written in 1960. So, how could Luther have influenced the events of the story? No. Luther was just the main hero of that period. But the story did not end nor stop with Martin Luther King Jr. There were many more heroes who were unsung at the time. One of them in this fictional work is Tom Robinson. Now, Alabama is where our author was raised in, and is where she was born to. So she knew that place very well. I want to believe that much of what she is written in the story is true. In fact, that will make us call the story Romanically. Have you heard of this before? Romanically. This is a form of prose used to mean any literary work that is about real people, real events, real story. But the names have been changed to fictitious ones. So everything you read in the story is actually true, but the names have been changed so as not to offend some people's sensibilities. Do you get it? And then I don't think you have read the part of the story where something is written about the story. in which many generations of people, government bodies, civil society bodies have tried to get this book censored or banned, taken down, even from the TV, from from different platforms, just because the story is telling us something very important, something true. Okay, then what period? Let's talk about the years. I talked about the years here. What years are we looking at? Okay, that's 1930s. Our writer herself was born in 1927, so she must, like, before she could tell a right from a left, she must have got to the 1930s, not 1920 something. So she froze that moment of her life and used it to write the story. Now, why do we claim that it happens in 1930s? The events used in the story, they all took place in 1930s. In fact, the story itself is set in the 1930s. So 1933, for example, to 1960, how many years have passed between them? You do some math. Okay, that's 27 years have passed between these years. 1933 to 1960, that's 27 years. Okay, by the 1960s, the struggle for civil rights movement or civil rights for blacks had become almost a success. But by the 1930s, the civil rights movement was almost non-existent, not in existence. So she writes about the period that was unfortunate, a period that never got people to get justice for those who lived in it. Now let's talk about the cultural setting of the story. The cultural setting, that's southern US. So it's not just the whole of US, southern US. After slavery ended in 1865 in the US, talking about the cultural setting, something happened. There was what we call Jim Crow laws. In fact, I wrote that before. Jim Crow laws and the Ku Klux Klan. Now, these two laws, they lasted between 1865 and 1965. That's one full century. One full century. There was almost no difference between slavery and this period. Yeah, on paper, slavery denied the blacks right to anything. But in reality, this also denied them all of that. For example, the southern US was known for cotton plantation. The cotton plantation never stopped. The cotton plantation involved the use of black labor, almost unpaid labor. So, in fact, we have a character who was a victim of that period, and that's Tom Robinson himself. How did he get one of his hands handicapped? One of his hands got almost amputated by a cutting wheel. So that period was unfair because there was no other job for any black person except the menial one. Menial one, like working as a cleaner. Even in the military, they had to work as diggers. So those were the types of job available for them. Okay. Now, the society was largely based on segregation, as I said earlier. And as a result of that, blacks could not become politicians. And if they had the opportunity to get to that point, the white-dominated society would stop them. In our story, we see how all the members of the jury. The jury is another name for judge. A group of judges in the US, some groups of judges, it's not all judges that make up the jury. Well, the jury system in the US, what's special about it is that it makes for fair representation when it comes to making judgment, unlike a judge system. So you will have your own, the people who are concerned, they are the ones who will be on the jury. Or like the judge system, that any impartial person that does not know much about the event or the case can be posted to it. But in the jury system, no. It's only the concerned parties, people from that state, people from that place. They are the ones who will be part of the judges. So that's the good thing about it. But the bad thing is, what if that society, that community was dominated by whites or just one group of people? So what becomes of the minority? They will not be fairly represented, as it happens in this story. To Kill a Mockingbird. All the members of the jury are white. So when it comes to getting justice for the black boy, like for them to just listen that this young girl claims she was raped, and look at where she was hit. She was hit on her left cheek. A right-handed person could have done that, so not a left-handed person. So how does that add up? This boy does not have his right arm is injured. So how would he have been able to do that? So all the white judges, they were not willing to listen because they feared for their lives. The remaining white members of society will go after them and kill them. So it's understandable. Now let's look at the sociological setting, or we can also say political setting. The political setting. What type, when we say political or sociological, what is the political, when it is political, that means it involves conflict of interest among power wielders, especially political parties. Now, the blacks, they were able to get the support of the Democrats for them to be able to win their civil rights in 1965. So in our story, those whites that take the sides of Tom Robinson, especially, or even take the side of not just Tom Robinson, but even the Finches, those white characters or white members of society, able to take the side of the Finches. They are liberalists, just as all the Democrats of that period were known for. So it's again, the Democrats knew that they needed the untrained, the uneducated number to be added to their midst so that they could get the vote they wanted. In fact, that same period, I'm referring to the period when JF Kennedy, John Franklin Kennedy, was the president of US. Before he became the president of US, he was looking for the big votes from the blacks to become the president. And he courted the attention and was able to win the attention of the black civil rights movement led by the main hero of that period. That was Martin Luther King Jr. He got it. He got it. And what did he use it to do? He was able to use it to become the president. Although he paid his life for it. He died as a result of that victory he gave to them. So what was happening at that period, like the white liberals giving their support to the blacks who were oppressed, we also see that in that story. So with the political terrain of that period, although it's not yet gone, it's still there, the Democrats and the Republicans. Now let's look at the last part of the setting, that's the geographical setting. When we say geography in literature, we don't really mean geography as you think. Geography, when we say geographical setting, what we mean is the part of the world in which the story takes place. Now, which part of the world do we have Macomb? There is no Mecum in any part of the world. So the geographical setting of the story is fictional. In case you see the question, what is the geographical setting of the story? Say it's a fictional one. The geographical setting of the story is a fictional place called Mecum. It never exists in the real world, but it exists in the imagination of the writer. Now, why would she use Mecum, a non-existent town? I said it earlier. She used that Mecum to hide the real identity of the town in which something similar happened. You know, in literature, we don't joke about sarcasm. If you don't know how to write with sarcasm, you are going to be the victim of the system. So that's why she has chosen to write using sarcasm. Okay, now let's look at another one, another part of the story. Now, this is the form of this work. We are looking at narrative techniques and form, narrative techniques and forms. Well, for most students, when we talk about narrative techniques, they always think we are talking about POV. Yes, POV is the most important part, but that's not the only one. So we are looking at the point of view. The point of view. If you have read through this book, you will agree with me. In fact, by the time you open the first page of the book, what do you see there? Who is the narrator? The narrator is a first person. The narrator is a first person, a child of 6 or 9 years. Child of 6 or 9 years. When the story begins, the child is 6. Now, as the story unfolds, the child gets to 9 years. Now, why does the writer use a first-person narrator? You know, the first-person narrator is the one that uses I. That's also a very important UTME likely question. So what type of point of view is used in the work, or which of the following is not a narrative technique used in the story? So the first-person point of view is a major point, a point of view used in the story. And why do we say it's first? And then this is even single. We have 2 types of first-person point of view. One is single, the other one is multiple. But this is a single first-person point of view. Now, the single first-person point of view is the use of I, as I said earlier, or we. But in the story, we don't have we have I. The narrator is telling us what happens where she was born and raised. Then, because she's so young, she's so naive, almost everything she believes is not true. In fact, that's another reason the story is called a sentimentalist novel. Because it's based on naivety and innocence. So, as I said earlier, we were on narrative techniques, and I've talked about the first person point of view used there, the importance of it. That the story, you know, in literature, when we use the first person point of view, the main reason is to detach ourselves from the story. The main reason for first person point of view is for the author to detach herself from the story. This happens when the story is not believable. So you are telling something that is not true, something that they find very far-fetched. How do you get people to believe what you too fail to believe? So the best way to go about that type of story is the first person point of view. So it's one character in the story that will tell it. It's not the author themselves that will tell the story. That is not believable. Now, let's look at sentimentalism in the story. Have you heard of this literary concept before? Okay, it's just from the word sentimental or sentiment. Or is it something that's based on sentiment? You mean it's not based on reality? So, sentimentalist novels like this one are about imaginations, not about what is real. Now, for example, the story is full of exploits in the town of Macon. Why would anybody do something that is not logical? Why would the children, for example, risk their lives by going into a neighborhood they were never welcome in? Why would they do that? Is that not sentimentalist? Not only that, I'm telling you reasons we say the story is highly sentimentalist. The children risking their lives going to a place where they are not welcome. That's one. Another reason we say the story is sentimentalist is that when the narrator tells us that it's only two persons she likes, that every other person around her is a problem, that's sentimentalist. Those people she claims, Scout claims to like or admire, are just trying to become unrealistic to please her, to humor her. But the thing is, that town is full of racism, and these children are blind to that fact. For example, we have Nathan Radley. Nathan Radley is the true owner of the Radley place. So the younger brother always keeps himself locked in that house. Nobody knows what the problem is, but he likes to keep himself in. Now, the real owner of the house is the elder brother, would not have him do what he likes doing by giving the black children free gifts. So, what if they endanger their lives? What if someday Nathan kills them? Who will get justice for them? So that's so we have a narrator who is very unrealistic, even about her own decision. That makes the story sentimentalist. And the last reason we say the story is sentimentalist is that her judgment, the narrator's judgment of other characters, is not dependable. It's full of childishness. Now, Capronia, the housekeeper, for example, is very understanding, and she's one of the very few characters the protagonist of the story likes. But what becomes of Atticus' younger brother? The children don't like him, maybe because he's childless or something, but they should have been able to find a way around that. To be childless is not a crime. So it shouldn't have got to that point. But because they are kids, they will always be unrealistic in their judgment of others. Okay. Now, in case you see a question on uh, which of the following is not a feature of the story, you know, oh, if I give you sentimentalist, metaphysical, all of that, oh, it's metaphysical, it's not sentimentalist. That's it. Then now, because the story is sentimentalist, that explains why the story is hardly, it has received very little criticism. It has a lot of commercial success, but it never gets that literary attention it deserves. One thing is clear: the narrative and even the subject matter, the characters, they are not cardboard characters. You know what we call cardboard characters? These are poorly developed characters. That's what we call them. Poorly developed characters. They don't act like real humans. Okay? Real humans must grow in literature for us to have well-developed characters. Your characters must grow from innocence, from ignorance to wisdom to knowledge. You must have them in that way. And they must have multiple roles. They must not be stuck in one particular role. Now, all the characters here, yeah, most of them are stock characters, but some, they also grow. Let's talk about those ones that grow. For example, the first one is Atticus himself. Atticus is a dynamic character. He grows with the story. Okay? Another one that grows, Atticus is a dynamic character. Atticus Finch. Why is he a dynamic character? Before we write more of those characters in the story, he is dynamic because at the beginning of the story, yes, he has always been a very, very lively lawyer, very smart lawyer. In fact, he's called a deadbeat lawyer in the neighborhood. But for him to have taken up the weak boys case, Tom Robinson, that's a big deal. Virtually every other lawyer in the neighborhood would not want to take up such a case because they know how that will ruin their reputation and their relationships with their neighbors, with their friends around the neighborhood. But he takes the pain to do that. And not only that, he's very understanding. There are times he's a soft-hearted father, and there are times also very tough on the kids. So that's what it means to be dynamic. You don't have to be cast, cast and die. No. But you have to be growing. There are times you are soft, there are times you are hard or tough. So that's the kind of person he is. Now, but let's see, most of our characters in the story, they are stock characters. They are very naive. And the best example of these stock characters is the protagonist of the story. What's his name? Or what's the name? That's Scout. Scout is a tomboy. Have you read the part why she's called a tomboy? I think the idea of tomboy is based on is sociological, and then it's not fair at some point. Well, she was not raised by a mother because the mother died when she was very young. So she lived with men and boys all her life. Her elder brother, Jem, her friend, Deal, and even her father, Atticus. And these are people she looks up to, and these are people she likes to hang, out that she likes to hang around with. So she's been influenced by them in many ways. She's not dressed like a girl. And she does not even want it because her aunt will tell her, Aunt Alexandra, that she should be wearing something that will make her look girlish. But she says no. Now, from the beginning of the story to the end, she remains that way. She never grows. Not only that, our understanding or consciousness of racism in that neighborhood never happens, neither from the beginning, nor in the middle, nor even in the end of the story. She remains a stock character. But again, why do we say she's a stock character? That's not the main reason. Stock characters are characters that have familiar traits. That's the standard definition of that expression. Familiar traits. That means when you see someone, you know the status they have, and then you just give them that status. For example, to be a child is to be full of innocence. That's the meaning. Now, all children that are innocent, they are stock characters. But if you see a child that challenges the basic assumptions about who they are, that's no longer a stock character in the literary work. So, this she is a stock character because the novelist creates her character around the popular perception about children, especially of that period. All she knows is just what a child should know. A child should know have the family, the friends, play around, but that's all she knows. Not only that, in fact, all the children, including Jem, Scout, and Deal. But how much of his cow or of his stock character is in each of these children? Look at this. Deal, his case is different. It's not so much of a stock character. The reason is this. He's conscious of his suffering, he's conscious of the problems around him to some extent compared to these siblings. Why do we say this? He comes from a family of a single mother, and the father and the mother they parted ways long ago, so he never got the father's love. Now the mother got a stepfather for him. How did he find? And then since the man got into that life, the man had been beating beating him, putting pressure on him and all of that. So unfortunately, what did this boy have to do? The boy had to run away from home. He had to be coming over to the aunt's place. And that aunt's place is Macon, that town. And not only that, that aunt's place is Macon, that town. So now we are on themes, the thematic analysis of the novel. Now, the central theme of the story is this one, the second one. This one is secondary to the first one. Now, because from the title, To Kill a Mockingbird, we have to start with the problem before we move to the solution. It is true that some people serve as a solution to the problem in the story, like Atticus. But before Atticus could be meaningful, so you have to create problems. Okay, so we are going to blame the system. The southern US, or you say racial part of southern US at that time was the main system to blame for what happens in the story. Although that fault is represented in some characters in the story, like Bob Howell, and the daughter. Bob Howell and the daughter, they are symbolic of that system. They are as debased as the system itself. They know what's right and they know what's wrong. How can you pin the blame that you deserve to take on another person just because the system allows you to do so? That means your character is not growing. That they are not edifying their own personality. They are not changing. So the central theme of the story is racism or racialism or social injustice. But you see, racialism captures it specifically. Social injustice can capture so many things. There's economic injustice, it's also sociological. There is economic injustice, Many types of injustice, social injustice, but the one we are really interested in here is racialism. You may be wondering why I said racialism and not racism. It's here too. Now,